Some memories from childhood feel ordinary at first, like a quiet night fishing with your brother, the cool water lapping at your legs, the stars just starting to appear. But every now and then, something so strange, so unnerving, creeps into those ordinary moments that you can never forget them. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about one of those nights, the night a simple fishing trip became something I couldn't explain, something that still haunts me years later. There's this lake that my brother and I used to fish. We'd use live bait, usually crickets or worms, and we'd catch a ton of bluegill. It was a fun time, and some of those early memories are the reason I've been such an avid fisherman for most of my life. The lake wasn't the most popular fishing spot, despite being pretty well stocked from what I can remember. I think most of the locals just found it inconvenient and inaccessible unless you were prepared to hike through the woods a bit, which my brother and I always were. The seclusion was actually one of my favorite things about it, almost like we were sharing a private activity that not everyone got to experience. Everyone knows the best lake fishing happens during periods of low light, meaning early morning or late evening. Most people would wake up at dawn to get their lines in, but my brother and I had developed a habit of going later in the day and staying into the night. It was our substitute for whatever most high school kids did on a Friday night, probably partying or something else. It was a Friday night, and everything was going according to plan. We reached the lake just as the sun started to set, and by the time we were all baited up, it was already dipping below the tree line. We were positioned on a little formation of rocks at the edge of the lake, which made a good, comfortable surface for us and all our excess gear. We've been doing this hundreds of times, so it felt like second nature. But that night something happened that I would never forget. As we were fishing, something caught my eye on the far side of the lake. There was movement in the water, faint ripples that seemed unusual. My first thought was a big fish, maybe a bass or a catfish, but the size didn't add up. I pointed it out to JJ, and we both squinted, tried to figure it out. The lake was sizable, and with the low light, visibility was poor. But as we kept watching, the ripples began to rise, and suddenly a dark mass started emerging from the water. My assumption that it was a giant fish was immediately dispelled. It wasn't a fish. It was way too upright, way too deliberate. It was a person. The realization hit us both at the same time, and I heard JJ curse in exactly the same moment I did. There, in the middle of a semi-private lake at dusk, a human being was rising out of the water as though they had been submerged for quite some time. It was freaky enough to make my heartbeat spike, and I felt a compelling urge to leave. JJ, of course, wasn't ready to abandon the lake. He said it was too far away to affect us, but I could feel a chill crawling up my spine. Despite that, we continued to watch, transfixed. The figure swayed back and forth rhythmically, almost hypnotically. It wasn't jerky like a normal swimmer. It was fluid, almost commanding the water around them rather than moving through it. Fishing? Swimming? Training? I couldn't reason it out. JJ suggested it might be a night swimmer enjoying the cold, but even the thought of swimming in that temperature made me shiver. We tried to refocus on our fishing, but it was impossible. Every muscle in my body was tense, my eyes locked on the shadow across the water. I glanced at JJ. He wasn't holding his fishing pole anymore, completely transfixed, lips parted. It took a few frustrated calls from me before he finally snapped out of it, picking his pole back up. Minutes passed. Then the figure submerged again. The water where they'd been stood still, almost like nothing had moved there at all. I counted in my head, 1 minute, 2 minutes. How long could someone hold their breath underwater? JJ had his phone out, stopwatch running. Almost 3 minutes later, I was ready to leave. But curiosity, that relentless monster, held me there. The figure emerged again. This time, much closer, 1/5 of the way across the lake. My pulse raced. The silhouette became clearer. It wasn't a man as we had assumed. It was a woman. Long brown hair, dark green swimsuit. Not much older than us. And she smiled. Her voice cut through the stillness. Hi. She was beautiful, confident, almost playful, and terrifying. JJ asked her what she was doing. She said she was swimming, jokingly adding she was training. Then, she asked if we wanted to join her. I almost laughed. Then I realized I couldn't move. My mind was a mixture of awe and terror. The water was freezing, and yet she seemed perfectly at ease. My warning to leave was drowned out by the sound of her shriek, a sound like someone being stabbed. When we refused, we ran. Every step back to the car, I expected her to emerge from the lake and pursue us, but she didn't. JJ called the police, but we weren't comfortable staying. The lake eventually became a shared memory for my brother and me, a strange, terrifying, almost hypnotic night that we joke about, but never truly understand. We never saw her again. Now, years later, the memory of her standing in that lake, smiling while the water lapped cold against her body, it still haunts me. Was she real? Mentally ill? Something else entirely? I'll never know. Fishing had always been a source of peace. That night, it became a reminder that sometimes, even the most serene places can hide something inexplicably strange and frightening. Fishing has always been more than just a hobby for me. It's the kind of obsession that makes you chase the quietest, loneliest spots where no one else dares to go. That's how I ended up in the marshes with my friend Angel about 2 months ago. He's just as obsessed with fishing as I am, which makes him the perfect partner for something like this. We decided to go marsh fishing for speckled trout. The marshes around Louisiana are shallow, muddy, and deceptively calm, perfect for us. We took my 2-person kayak and paddled silently into the reeds, the only sounds being our paddles cutting through water and the occasional bird settling in the reeds. Early spring still left the water icy, but we didn't care. The thrill of isolation and the anticipation of trout made up for the cold. About 30 minutes into paddling, we found a promising spot. The water was eerily still, flat as glass, with the reeds bending like dark green waves in the early evening light. The marsh seemed completely empty, and that emptiness was exactly why I liked it. Angel cracked open a beer, I did the same, and we let the quiet settle. We'd been fishing for maybe an hour when Angel hooked something decent. Excited, he leaned over to get a better angle, and that's when disaster struck. His phone, tucked loosely in his jacket pocket, slipped out and plummeted into the murky water. "Shit!" he yelled, splashing in the shallow water. His frustration was immediate. He couldn't afford a new phone right now, even with insurance. I tried to calm him down, suggesting we could at least try to find it. 20 minutes passed as we groped through the mud with paddles, trying to feel the phone's shape, but it was hopeless. The bottom was a thick soup of mud, decaying reeds, and hidden roots. Angel refused to give up. "I'm not leaving without it," he said. Without warning, he started peeling off his shoes and pants, determined to wade in barefoot and feel for the phone with his feet. I hesitated, but figured it was better than blindly stabbing around with paddles. The water was freezing, cold that sears into your bones, stealing breath, freezing your movements mid-step. Angel cursed constantly as he tested the muddy bottom. The water reached almost up to his chest in some areas, but he was determined. Then it happened. Angel's foot snagged something solid. He leaned down to free it, and in a split second, his body was pulled under the water. I froze. For a terrifying moment, I thought it was just the mud pulling him down, but this was different. Something had grabbed him. He surfaced screaming, covered in filth and trembling. He shouted at me to get out of there. His voice was panicked, raw, shaking, not just from cold. "What grabbed you?" I shouted over the water. It wasn't a fish," he gasped. "It wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't like anything I've felt before. It wrapped around my ankle like it had strength beyond anything alive in this marsh. It tried to drag me under." I pulled him back in the kayak, my heart hammering in my chest. The marsh, once peaceful, now felt alive with menace. Shadows clung to the reeds like claws, and the water rippled unnaturally around where he'd been pulled under. The ride back to the launch was silent. Angel didn't say much, just kept glancing back as if something were following. My mind raced. Alligator? Big catfish? Mud monster? Nothing made sense. The water had grabbed him with deliberate force, like it was alive. When we finally hit solid ground, I could see the color drain from his face. Even the beers couldn't hide his fear. I tried to joke it off, suggesting it was just a big fish with a nasty bite. He wasn't buying it. "Whatever it was," he muttered, voice trembling. It's not something you mess with. I wanted to go back the next day just to see, just to prove it was nothing. But even thinking about it made my stomach churn. That marsh, with its shallow water and whispering reeds, had something hidden beneath it. A predator, something intelligent, patient, waiting. 2 weeks later, I was with a different crew. Kat, Nick, and Megan, the usual weekend adventure gang. Saturday evening, we decided to try a reservoir near Megan's house. A classic spot, she said. Nick and I knew it was stocked with bass, so we were eager to fish, while Kat and Megan brought blankets, drinks, and the hope of swimming. The reservoir was small, bordered on 3 sides by woods, the 4th by a narrow access road. Crystal clear water. A hidden sandy beach, perfectly secluded. As we approached, Kat pointed out a canoe wedged into the reeds. Odd. We'd been here dozens of times. The canoe looked like someone had just left in a hurry. Fishing rod still dangling, tackle box open, half-eaten sandwich on the seat. And a phone, flashlight on, locked, sitting perfectly in place. No one was around. The 4 of us exchanged uneasy glances. Why leave a phone behind? Why abandon all this stuff? Curiosity won. Nick and I walked over to check. The canoe floated slightly, shifting with the water. The silence was thick. We couldn't see anyone nearby, but the marshy reeds seemed to whisper with unseen movement. Returning to the group, we noticed a figure on the far side of the reservoir. Knee-deep in water, perfectly still, staring at us. Holding something long, maybe a stick, maybe a fishing rod. Then or it screamed. A raw, terrifying sound. Not words. Screams that could pierce your soul. My stomach dropped. We bolted, faster than I thought possible. Through the fence, to the car. Behind us, the splashes followed, but I dared not look back. 20 minutes later, safe in Megan's driveway, we try to rationalize it. Trespasser? Insane? Owner of the canoe? Predator? Nothing fit. We never went back. The canoe remains, abandoned in my memory, as haunting as angels grip beneath the marsh. Fishing, a pursuit of serenity, had shown me another face, a lurking, incomprehensible menace. Something waits below, patient, intelligent, and terrifyingly strong. They say some lakes are alive, not with fish, but with something older, something patient. I never believed it until last summer, when my friends and I went on a weekend trip to a remote cabin in the northern woods of Michigan. It was just me, my best friend Leo, and 2 others, Maya and Colin. The cabin was tucked behind a dense forest, on the edge of a lake, so still it reflected the sky like a dark, glassy mirror. The water had a strange quality to it, clear, but deep, with shadows that seemed almost purposeful. Our plan was simple: fish, drink, and escape the chaos of city life. None of us suspected that the lake had plans of its own. We arrived mid-afternoon, the sun already slanting gold through the pines. The cabin was rustic but livable, the kind with creaking floors, peeling paint, and an odd, almost hypnotic smell of wet wood and moss. Outside, the lake stretched farther than expected, framed by jagged trees and reeds that bent in the light breeze. Leo and I immediately unpacked our fishing gear. Maya and Colin set up chairs near the water's edge, sipping beers and commenting on how creepy the lake looked. I laughed it off. I'd fished in enough isolated lakes to know that eerie silence doesn't necessarily mean danger. Or so I thought. By sunset, we'd each caught a few small bass, enough for bragging rights, but not much more. As the sky deepened into purples and blacks, the lake seemed to darken, swallowing our reflections. That's when we first noticed movement, a ripple in the water, far off near the far shore. Probably a fish, Colin said, but his voice carried an edge of unease. Leo squinted. Too big for a bass. Maybe a deer or something wading in. I shook my head. The ripple wasn't random. It moved like it was aware of us. I brushed it off at first, telling myself it was just my imagination. After dinner, we sat around a fire near the water's edge, beer in hand, talking and laughing. But the lake remained oddly still, unnaturally quiet except for a soft, almost whispering lapping against the shore. That's when it came out of the water. At first, I thought it was another fisherman, some late-night wanderer. But the figure didn't move like a normal person. It emerged slowly, deliberately, upright in the water, its body glistening and wet in the firelight. Maya gasped. Who is that?" I stepped closer to the edge, trying to make sense of it. The figure didn't respond, didn't blink, just stared at us. Tall, thin, its movements smooth, almost serpentine. And then it smiled. A smile that didn't belong to a human. Leo muttered, "We should leave." But none of us moved. There was a magnetic pull, like the lake itself was drawing our eyes, compelling us to watch. Over the next hour, the figure did something we couldn't explain. It glided closer, submerging and resurfacing with unnatural grace, circling our firelight like a predator studying its prey. Maya clutched Colin's arm. Leo whispered that maybe it was someone playing a joke, but the way it moved, it was impossible for any human. The moment we tried to leave the fire, the figure disappeared beneath the water. Silence returned, but it felt different, charged, almost expectant. That night, none of us slept. Every sound outside, the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, made us jump. Every glance toward the water made our stomachs tighten. The next morning, we decided to fish farther out into the lake, using a small rented rowboat. I thought that if we were on the water, away from shore, the figure wouldn't approach. I was wrong. As soon as we rowed a few hundred feet, the water around the boat began to ripple unnaturally. Small waves circled the hull, rising and falling with precision, like something beneath was moving in patterns we couldn't understand. Maya screamed when a shadow passed under the boat, dark and massive. I peered over the side. Something huge was swimming beneath us, something bigger than any fish I'd ever seen. It moved with intention, as if it were sizing us up. Leo tried to row back to shore faster, but the water seemed to resist our movement. Every stroke felt heavier, like an invisible hand were holding us back. Panic rose, sharp and immediate. Then it happened. A single massive hand, or something shaped like a hand, broke the water beside the boat. It didn't grab the boat, not at first, but it caused the water to rise, slamming against the sides, rocking us violently. Colin lost his balance and tumbled toward the edge. Maya screamed, and Leo shouted at me to grab her. I didn't have time to think. The thing beneath the water pushed upward, and suddenly the boat tipped. We were all in the freezing lake, flailing, trying to grab anything solid. And that's when I felt it, cold, strong, unyielding. Something coiled around my ankle and tugged. My heart leapt into my throat. I kicked, screamed, tried to pull free, but the grip was inhuman. Leo and Colin were shouting. Maya was crying. I felt panic rise until it became a single, driving instinct, survive. I kicked harder. The thing released me after a long, terrifying moment, disappearing beneath the waves with a sound that echoed like a scream. We scrambled back into the overturned boat, soaked and shivering, eyes wide. No one spoke. The lake had made its first move, and we were lucky to escape. Back at the cabin, we tried to rationalize it. Big catfish, alligator gar, some sort of prank. But none of us could explain the size, the intelligence, or the grip. And the way it disappeared beneath the water, like it was studying us, that was different. That night, sleep was impossible. Every ripple, every creak of the cabin floor felt like a warning. And then we heard it, the water. Soft at first, then louder, as if the lake itself was breathing. A low, rolling hum rose from the darkened water outside. Not wind, not frogs, but something deliberate. We stayed huddled, terrified, listening to the lake. On the third day, we decided we couldn't leave without confronting it. We grabbed our gear and waded into the shallows near the dock. The lake was eerily calm, reflecting the gray sky. Then it surfaced directly in front of us. Not human, not fish. Something older, larger, and intelligent. Its eyes, if you could call them that, locked onto us, and I felt a pull in my chest like it wanted to draw us in. Leo tried to throw a fishing lure at it. Nothing happened. Maya screamed, backing away. The thing's gaze followed her. I don't know why, but I stepped forward, feeling the water pulse around my legs. It let us watch, and then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished beneath the water. We left the lake that day, never to return. Weeks later, I still think about that lake. The way it moved, the way it watched. Something lives there, something patient, intelligent, and waiting. I've told the story to friends, but they laugh it off. Some lakes are alive, I realize now. Not with fish, but with hunger. The lake waits, patiently. And when I close my eyes, I can still see it. The dark water, the shadow beneath, and the knowing pull that promises it will be back.